Everything I saved for 40 years was gone, and I still had so much living left to do. I was 76 years old, no income, no plan, just a very empty bank account and a whole lot of tomorrows. Nobody warns you that the money can run out while you are still healthy, still sharp, still here. I had to figure out how to start over at 76 with nothing, and I did. What I learned in those years is something they will never teach you in any financial class or retirement seminar. So stay with me, because what I am about to tell you could change everything for you.
My name is Margaret Ellen Cosby. I am 98 years old, and I have been broke for longer than most of you have been adults. I don't say that to shock you. I say it because somebody needs to say it out loud, and none of the people selling you retirement plans ever will. I had money once, good money, decent money, the kind of money that makes you feel safe when you lay your head down at night. And then one morning I woke up and it was gone. Not stolen, not lost in the stock market, just used up, like a candle that burned all the way down while I wasn't paying attention. That morning I was 76 years old, and I still had a whole lot of living left to do. So today I want to talk to you, not to scare you. I've lived long enough to know that fear doesn't fix anything. I want to talk to you the way I wish somebody had talked to me when I was sitting right where you are, somewhere between 45 and 65, thinking the future was still far enough away that I had time to figure it out later. Later comes faster than you think. Trust me on that one. My husband Raymond and we weren't foolish people. I want you to understand that before we go any further. Raymond worked 34 years at the same paper mill. I taught third grade for 28 years. We paid our mortgage, we raised 3 children, we put a little something away every month like we were told to. We did what you're supposed to do, and we still ran out of money. Not because we were reckless, because we made assumptions. Quiet, reasonable-sounding assumptions that turned out to be dead wrong. The biggest one was this: we assumed we knew how long we were going to live. Raymond used to say his family weren't long livers. His daddy went at 68, his grandfather at 71. Raymond figured he'd be gone by 75, maybe 80 if he was lucky. So we planned around that. We saved enough for maybe 15 or 20 years of retirement. That seemed like plenty. That seemed generous, even. Raymond died at 79. Right on schedule, he would have said. He never saw what was coming for me. Because I am still here. 23 years after our money was supposed to run out, I am still here. Drinking my morning tea, watching the birds outside my daughter's kitchen window. Still here. And for a long time, still here meant still struggling. Still figuring out how to make nothing stretch into something. Still choosing between the heating bill and the medication. Still swallowing my pride every single month to ask my children for help. Children who had their own mortgages, their own children, their own lives to fund. That is not the retirement I worked 28 years for, and it doesn't have to be yours. So let me tell you what happened, all of it, and then let me tell you what I would do differently, because that's the part that matters to you today. Raymond retired at 63. I followed him 2 years later at 65. We were healthy, we were happy, we had our little house paid off, and we had what felt like a respectable nest egg sitting in a savings account at our local bank. I won't tell you the exact number because it's not the number that matters. What matters is that we thought it was enough. The first years were fine, beautiful even. We traveled a little. Nothing extravagant, a few road trips, 1 cruise for our anniversary. We fixed up the back porch, we babysat our grandchildren. Life was good in that simple, quiet way that I didn't fully appreciate until it was behind me. The trouble started the way trouble usually starts, quietly and all at once. Raymond's health began to slip when he was around 72. Nothing dramatic at first, a bad knee. Then his heart started asking questions that the doctors charged a great deal of money to answer. We started spending more than we had planned for healthcare, a lot more. And here is something nobody tells you clearly enough when you're planning your retirement. Healthcare costs will be the biggest expense you have, and they will arrive exactly when your income stops growing. We had Medicare. I want to be clear about that. But Medicare, and I say this gently because I don't want to confuse you, Medicare is not the same as having your healthcare costs covered. There are gaps, big ones, quiet ones that don't announce themselves until the bill arrives. Prescription costs, specialist visits, procedures that Medicare covers at 80%, which sounds wonderful, until you realize 20% of a $40,000 procedure is $8,000 coming out of your own pocket. By the time Raymond passed, we had spent roughly a third of everything we had saved on his medical care. And I don't regret a single dollar of it. I would spend it all again. But I wish I had known to plan for it. I wish somebody had sat me down at 55 and said, Margaret, assume healthcare will cost you twice what you think, because it will. After Raymond was gone, I was 79 years old, living alone in our house, and I had roughly enough money to last me maybe 5 or 6 years if I was careful. I told myself I would be careful. I told myself I would manage. What I didn't tell myself, because I couldn't bear to say it out loud, was that I was terrified. The house was the first problem. We had paid it off, and I thought that meant I was safe. Owning your home free and clear feels like the most solid thing in the world. But a house that you own still costs money every single month. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, heat, water, electricity. Our old house was starting to need things. A new roof, a furnace that was older than my youngest grandchild. Every year something else needed fixing, and every year I paid for it out of the same shrinking pool of money. I was 81 when the furnace finally gave out in December. The repair cost more than I had left in my checking account. I sat in my kitchen with my coat on, too cold to think clearly, trying to figure out which child I was going to call. That was one of the loneliest feelings I have ever had, and I have had some lonely feelings. I called my daughter Patricia. She drove 3 hours to be with me. She paid for the furnace without a word about it. But I saw something in her face that I have never forgotten. Not resentment, she is too good for that, but worry. The kind of worry that settles into the corners of a person's eyes and doesn't quite leave. I had become something my children worried about. At 81 years old, I had become a source of anxiety for people I had spent my whole life trying to protect. I decided right then that I was not going to just sit there and let this keep happening. Now, here is where the story changes, because I want you to understand something important. I was 81 years old, sitting in a cold kitchen in rural Tennessee, a widow with a dwindling savings account and a house that was trying to eat me alive. And I still found ways to stabilize. Slowly, imperfectly, sometimes embarrassingly, but I found them. And if I found them at 81, you can find them today, at whatever age you are, with far more time and options than I had. The first thing I did was the thing I had been avoiding for 2 years because it felt like giving up. I sold the house. I know how that sounds. That house was where we raised our children, where Raymond and I had our whole life together. I had a peach tree in the backyard that Raymond planted the year our youngest was born. Leaving it felt like leaving him all over again. But Patricia sat with me one afternoon and we did the math together on a yellow legal pad at the kitchen table, the same way I used to teach my third graders to count. And when we were done, the math was plain. The house was consuming roughly $1,100 every month in taxes, insurance, and upkeep. And the house itself had appreciated enough that selling it would give me a lump sum that, handled properly, could generate income every single month for as long as I lived. That last part, for as long as I lived, was the part I had never thought to plan for. Income that cannot run out because it is attached to your life, not to a number in a bank account. We sold the house. I moved into a small, clean apartment 10 minutes from Patricia. My monthly costs dropped by more than half, and we used a portion of the proceeds to purchase something called a single premium immediate annuity, a financial product that, I promise you, sounds more complicated than it is. Here is what it is in plain language. You give an insurance company a lump sum of money, They give you a guaranteed check every single month for the rest of your life. It does not matter if you live to 90 or 100 or 110. The check comes every month. You cannot outlive it because it is tied to you, not to a balance that can hit zero. I wish I had known about this at 60. I wish someone had explained it to me the way Patricia's financial advisor explained it to me at 82, calmly, without judgment, as if it were the most normal and obvious thing in the world. Because it is. It is just a way of making sure that no matter how long you live, you have money coming in. If I had purchased one of these at 60, even a modest one, Raymond and I would never have been in the position we found ourselves in. We would have had a floor, a guaranteed bottom below which our income could not fall. Everything else could have gone wrong, and we still would have had that floor. I am not telling you to run out and buy one tomorrow. I am telling you to learn what it is. Talk to someone who is not trying to sell you the most expensive version of it. Understand that it exists and that it is one of the most reliable ways a regular person can make sure they never outlive their money. The second thing I did, and this one is harder to talk about, was I asked for help before I needed it desperately. That sounds simple. It is not simple. Not for people of my generation, who were raised to believe that needing help was something close to shameful. I had been a teacher. I had been a wife, a mother, a community volunteer. I was the person other people leaned on. Becoming the person who needed leaning, that required a different kind of courage than anything I had done before. But I started talking. To Patricia, to my other children, to my church, to a social worker that Patricia found who specialized in helping seniors navigate exactly the kind of situation I was in. And every single conversation opened a door I didn't know existed. There were prescription assistance programs I qualified for that cut my medication costs nearly in half. There was a property tax relief program I had been eligible for years before I knew it existed. Money I had overpaid for almost a decade because I didn't know to ask. There were meal programs, transportation programs, utility assistance programs, a whole quiet infrastructure built for people in my situation that I had never encountered because I had never needed it before and had never thought to look. Pride is expensive. That is something I want you to hear clearly. The pride I carried for 2 years, the pride that kept me from asking questions and making phone calls and saying out loud that I needed help, that pride cost me real money, real countable dollars that I could not afford to lose. The third thing I did, and this one is the one I want to speak to you most directly because you still have time to do this differently, is I started talking to my children honestly about money. Raymond and I never did that. We came from a time when you didn't discuss finances with your children. Money was private, almost sacred in its privacy. You didn't tell your kids what you earned or what you had saved or what you were worried about. That was adult business. Your job was to look secure so they wouldn't worry. And so when the crisis came, my children were completely unprepared for it. Not because they were irresponsible, because they had no idea what was actually happening. They thought Raymond and I were fine because we had always presented ourselves as fine. If I had sat down with my children when I was 70 or 65 or even 75 and said, here is what we have, here is what we spend, here is what I am worried about, here is what will happen when your father is gone, all of us would have been in a better position. They could have helped me think through options before they became emergencies. They could have seen the furnace situation before it happened in December. We could have made the decision about the house together, calmly, over time, instead of at 82 with cold fingers and a heavy heart. Transparency with the people who love you is not weakness. It is strategy. It is one of the most practical financial decisions you can make. Now, I want to speak to you for a moment the way I would speak to my own daughter. If you are 45 or 55 or 65 and you are listening to this story, here is what I want you to actually do. First, find your number, not how much you have saved, how much you spend every single month, everything. Write it down. Be ruthlessly honest, because whatever that number is, you will need to cover it every month for the rest of your life, and you do not know how long that will be.
Neither do I. Neither does anyone. Second, plan for health care as its own budget line, separate from everything else. Assume it will be bigger than you think, because it will be. Third, learn what guaranteed income options exist for you. Social Security, yes, but understand that waiting even a few years to claim it can mean hundreds of dollars more per month for the rest of your life. The annuity option I mentioned, a pension if you're fortunate enough to have one. The question you want to be able to answer at 70 is this: if everything else went wrong, what income would I still have coming in every single month? If you cannot answer that question, you have work to do. Fourth, talk to your family now, not when something goes wrong, now, while you are calm and capable and can make good decisions together. And fifth, and I say this because I did not do it, and I wish every day that I had, plan for living longer than you think you will live, because you might. I did, and I am glad I'm still here. I am genuinely, deeply glad. But the gladness would have been so much sweeter if I hadn't spent so many years afraid. I am 98 years old. I live in a clean, warm apartment near my daughter. I have my guaranteed income every month. I have my medications. I have my tea in the morning and my birds outside the window. I have my grandchildren who visit on Sundays and my great-grandchildren who are loud and beautiful and who I adore completely. I am not rich, I never will be again, but I am stable, and after everything I have been through, I want to tell you that stable is a magnificent thing to be. I did not come here to shame you about what you haven't done yet. I am not interested in shame. Shame never balanced a single checkbook. I came here because I know what it feels like to be 79 years old and scared in your own kitchen, and I would not wish that feeling on a single person listening to this. You have time, not unlimited time, nobody gets that, but you have today, and today is enough to start making the choices that will protect you. Don't wait until December to fix the furnace. Don't wait until the account hits zero to ask for help. Don't wait until you are sitting in the cold to finally look at the numbers. Look at them, now. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere just yet.